The interventionist in Florida and I insisted that he stay there and go into we couldn't afford the rehab.
A halfway house.
Yes, so from the rehab he went into a halfway house. And he wasn't real happy about the halfway house.
Is it that he didn't expect that he would be living down there in a longer term situation and that was sprung on him? Or was it just what was going on in the halfway house, the people or whatever?
I think it was more what was going on in the halfway house. He picked it with the interventionist. I was not down there, and I spoke to the people on the phone. I called everybody. I guess he was having some issues in the halfway house. He couldn't find a job, which was expected of him, of course, and it was very hard to find a job, especially when he had no car, no way to get around. It just was difficult. But he did come home. He came home at the end of August, and he was sober. Oh, and I might add, while he was in rehab, he was very worried about his little brother finding any paraphernalia. And he called me up and told me where I could find everything. And above the vanities in the bathrooms, the light kits, they're usually hollow inside. It's the one place I never looked. In that hollow light kit above the mirrors were needles and even heroin that he obviously didn't realize he didn't do. It was just left behind, and he was so afraid that his brother was going to find it, so he called me to tell me to remove it.
And that it would be dangerous to his brother,
Absolutely.
Not because he was ashamed. It wasn't a matter of him being ashamed of it, although he may have been. It was more that he was looking out for his brother.
He was looking out for his brother. He was scared his brother would find it, you know.
How old is his brother?
11. 11. And he came home, and he's just personality seemed a little darker. I couldn't really pinpoint it. He stayed straight for about 4.5 months.
He was going to college.
He was. He enjoyed college when he was able to go. There were lots of days he never made it there because he had used. And that's how I could tell now that if he was using or not using, because he would not make it to college the next day. But when he was at school, he enjoyed it, except for math. He did not like math.
Well, he's not alone in that.
Yes, and he made it all the way through his first semester of his second year, and he passed away the week before finals. We found text messages in his phone. Well, let me backtrack. He was going for math help on a Thursday night, December 12th. He supposedly was going for math help, and I believe the kid that he was supposed to get math help from canceled on him, and he was very nervous about passing the math test because he was still in remedial math, and he just desperately wanted to be out of remedial. And the kid canceled on him, and for whatever reason, he decided to take a drive to Brooklyn and buy heroin. And in his phone, we found text messages that said that the heroin had a stamp of a tiger on it. I guess dealers put a logo on. I don't know.
Branding.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he was texting some young girl who he was friends with, who he was trying to help her overcome her drug abuse. And that's how their relationship started. He was trying to help her to get her off of drugs. And now their relationship had turned into comparing notes. And they were comparing notes through texts about heroin. And Jesse had told her he went and he bought heroin in Brooklyn. And his last text to her was, she had said to him, "Please be careful." And he texted her back, "Don't worry about me, I know my limits." That was his last text. And somewhere between Friday night, they believe he passed away actually he was started using Thursday night, and he passed away Friday in the middle of the day. So it's crazy because it's the only morning I never opened his door and checked in on him, ever. I had a feeling he was using the night before, and I didn't want to fight with him. And I didn't check him. And he was still alive, and I don't know what would have happened, if it would have made a difference or not, but I went to work, and I got the call at work that his brother found him. So his brother found him, and he had already passed away.
His younger brother? His older brother?
His older brother. They were best friends.
He had two older brothers, one a year older?
He has a brother 4 years older, and then he had a brother 2 years older.
And that's the brother
Yeah.
who found him, who he was so close with.
Yeah, and his brother found him, and he was not breathing. He was already gone. And they called me, and I don't know how I made it home from work. And I went in the house, and my son had passed away. And it's just sad because after he passed away, I started snooping. I used to snoop in his rooms and look for drugs, but I never snooped through his letters and things like that. I respected that. And I started going through boxes and boxes of letters he wrote to himself about the drug dreams and the sweats and the insomnia and wishing he could be normal again and wishing he could get one night of sleep without dreaming about drugs. And I just feel bad because I never understood the depth of the addiction. I just thought he could stop if he really wanted to. And
Well, years ago, people thought, I know in my parents' and my grandparents' time, people thought that, and it's really something I wanted to bring out here, is that people used to think that you're a bad person if you did drugs. There was something morally wrong with you, and now the insurance industry recognizes that this is an illness. And the Medical Association, the AMA, recognizes that this is an illness and that it's not that you're a bad person. I mean, everybody came to that funeral. Kids from all over the place, teachers, people, people who were involved in city government came. Jesse was known as a good guy. I mean, everyone who knew him, he had his troubles, but he was smart, happy when he wasn't suffering, incredibly talented musically.
he was a great drummer.
A great athlete.
He was
great drummer.
Funny. He was like an Adam Sandler lookalike.
Yeah.
He was so funny. He always called me Mama Dukes. I don't know why. I don't even know where it comes from.
Yeah, he was a sweet kid. He
But
was
he-
really, really sweet kid with a tremendous heart. And
He just couldn't find his way. He was insecure. And he didn't think he was liked. And I don't know if that, like you said, was the drugs or the embarrassment of what he was doing, because he was embarrassed. He was ashamed of himself.
I read that this guy, George Benedict, who founded Seafield, said, and it's a quote on the Seafield website, that there's no shame in being an alcoholic or an addict. The only shame is not doing anything about it. And Jesse did do things about it. He worked at it.
He did work at it.
And for someone who's young to stay clean and sober and to go to the places that people who want to get clean and sober go to, whether it's treatment or it's 12-step programs, and to stay with it when you're surrounded with other stuff, the people, places, and things of addiction, whether it's at school through, I don't think it's a school fault. I think it's part of society. But I think you also can't sweep it under the rug. It's really, really difficult, and I know Jesse really struggled with that. And I wondering if maybe it's part of the disease of addiction to think poorly of yourself, or to think you're not good enough, or that people don't like you. Because I know he was so sensitive,
Very sensitive.
and he could turn and walk away from a situation because his feelings were hurt. Because he was sensitive about something. And in a way, I mean, he was a very tough kid in some ways. I know he could be
Physically tough.
he could be tough on bullies.
He beat up many a bully that was picking on another kid. He didn't tolerate that. He would stick up for all the underdogs. Jesse had their backs always.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't like mean people.
Right. But the flip side of that is he was so sensitive, inside, that things just hurt. I think that from everything I read, let me read this. This is from the National Library of Medicine, which is a government website, and it's about causes of addiction. The exact cause of drug abuse and dependence is not known. This is the government, billions of dollars, is not known. However, a person's genes, the action of the drug itself, you take enough OxyContin, you can become, or oxycodone, you can become addicted, or heroin. The action of the drug itself, peer pressure, emotional distress, anxiety, depression, and environmental stress, what's going on in your life, can all be factors. And still, the exact cause isn't known. So all of these things, whether it's genetic, or it's stuff at school, or a girlfriend didn't like him or gave him a hard time or something like that, I don't know that we can figure it out. I mean, people have spent a lot of money in law enforcement and schools and treatment centers all over the place charge a lot of money, and they can't figure it out because it's a beast of a disease. And really what I want to bring out is that it's a disease, and that it's not somebody's fault. And it's certainly not the family's fault. It's not the person who's addicted's fault. It's nobody's fault. If you have cancer, is it your fault? No. It's something, do you know what I mean? It's a sickness, except in this case it's a sickness that affects not just the person, everybody.
Well, I think that's just it. It's a disease, and it's an allergy. So if you add alcohol or drugs to the allergy, it wakes it up. And it gets worse. Some of us have it and some of us don't. It is in the genes. It's an allergy. And me, personally, I believe that this disease of addiction is a self-medication for deeper stuff. That's just how I feel. I feel that not all, but most drug addicts and alcoholics are self-medicating something deeper, a mental illness. Nobody wants to say mental illness, but that's how I feel. And
I've read in some literature that it's physical. It's a problem that centers in the mind, mental illness,
and the
and
spirit.
the spirit, that causes, once the drug, alcohol, or some other drug is taken, it sets off a physical allergy.
Absolutely.
So you can call that a kind of mental illness. I know that society doesn't tend to think of it that way, but
They're coming to they're bringing it together.
Well, it's not a moral dilemma. It's not somebody's fault. Because this is the most wonderful kid. I knew Jesse a little bit, and what a wonderful, terrific, cool, funny, popular, though he didn't realize how popular he was. If he could have seen his own funeral, that half the world was there. And so...
Yeah, it's not bad people trying to get better.
It's hard because I don't want people to remember my son as a drug addict. I want them to remember him as just being a really good, compassionate human being who loved everybody. He wasn't that stigma
Yeah.
thing you think about when you think about a drug addict.
No.
That
Right,
you
exactly.
know,
That's exactly what we're trying to say here. Is that
but
whoever your kids are out there, this can strike them. In a rich community, in a well-educated community, in a not well-educated, in a black, in a white, in Asia, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
This disease is very democratic.
Yeah.
It can go after anybody.
And it doesn't even matter what you teach them as children, because we all taught our kids to stay away from drugs.
Right.
You don't do drugs.
Right.
Don't go near them. Stay away. But teenagers are teenagers, and you can't follow them around. And I do believe as well that it's a disease, but if they never started in the first place, if Jesse never picked up that first time, he would be here today. And if there was the proper help for him when he was 15,
Mm-hmm.
that I could afford,
Mm-hmm.
maybe he would have been here today if we had nipped it right in the butt, right from the beginning.
Absolutely.
How is your Jesse doing?
He's doing good for now.
So today, Thursday, he's
Yes,
okay.
He's good today.
Good.
He's good today. It's a day-to-day thing.
So let's talk a little bit. First of all, what would you say to other families, other moms, and other kids out there who think, gee, maybe I have a problem, but I can't tell my parents. I can't tell I'll get a beating. I mean, when I was a kid, that was, if you open your mouth, you got a beating.
Oh, yeah. Not
And
anymore. Not anymore.
if there was a problem, it was times were very different. And so what would you say to other families, because that's really why we're here, is if there's any little thing we can do to help anybody out there who might think maybe they have a problem, or think maybe their child has a problem but is afraid, won't bring it up?
I would say have your child tested, whether it's going to make them upset or not. To watch them carefully, because the deeper they get in, the harder it is to get them out of this disease. Don't think that your child's not using because you've taught them not to touch drugs.
Denial can be a pretty strong thing. You can
Yes,
just
and-
talk, well, it's probably not happening.
And
Sleep it
addicts
in.
are very manipulative, extremely manipulative. They can talk their way out of a brown paper bag. They can lie straight to your face. They can steal from you with a straight face. I would say, if you have suspicions that your child's using, you should go with your gut instinct. And if you're a kid who's using, you think twice about putting anything into your body that you don't know where it came from. You don't know what's in it. Because my son did not mean to die. He thought he was going to get high. And he would wake up the next day like he always did and go off to school and keep it a secret from everybody in the house. He did not want to die.
And I'm sure he thought he wouldn't. I'm sure,
No,
when you're 16 and you're athletic and you're strong, you think nothing can hurt you.
And now he's 20 and he still, he did not want to die. He just wanted to get high, and the drug got the best of him. He couldn't fight it anymore.
And it's a powerful enemy. It is, people don't underestimate it. Well, I can stop,
And it's something not to ignore. You cannot ignore it. If you think your child is using, get help, because it doesn't go away by itself.
So that's the number one thing, and I know that in 12-step places they talk about that they have one requirement: you got to want to stop. And at some of these other treatment centers, they talk about you got to want help. If you don't want help, if you don't admit that you have a problem, it's only so much that can be done.